Today's guest is e-commerce legendary recruiter Harry Joyner. Anyone who is anyone in e-commerce knows this guy's name. He's placed me personally at 4 companies before I started my Amazon Guy agency. Today we'll talk about e-commerce landscape, where it's been, where it's going. Super excited. All right, so Harry joins me now. Harry Joyner, thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. I'm super excited to have you.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So Harry and I go back several years. I mentioned in my intro there, he's placed me at 4 companies, and he has placed all of the big shots, big wigs in e-commerce, large companies, small companies. Everybody has utilized Harry to do e-commerce recruitment. He knows his stuff. So I just wanted to set him up as an expert in this space. And so today we're going to talk about the landscape of e-commerce. But in your own words, Harry, can you tell my listeners who you are?
I'm an e-commerce recruiter, and I'm online at eCommercerecruiter.com. And I have a partner in my business. His name is Alan Seibert, S as in Sam, E-I, B as in boy, E-R-T. And together we operate eCommerceJobs.com. So I have another pair of sites, CMO Search and CMOJobs.com, that I'm in the process of rolling out, and it's been like that for a few months, and now because of Corona and whatever, that's being probably mothballed just a little bit. So the focus for us for the next, who knows how long, 4 to 6 months, is going to be e-commerce recruiter, e-commerce jobs, and that's what we do.
Well, awesome. I'm sure we'll talk about Corona first, because that's clearly on everybody's mind right now. I mean, just minutes ago, the governor of Georgia announced that we're going to go on a statewide lockdown starting on Friday at midnight. And, my business has been affected. All of my clients' business has been affected. I'm sure yours has too, but it kind of feels like there might be a pulse in the economy right now somewhere. What are your thoughts?
It's really weird. That's it. I honestly have no idea what to say. I've never seen anything like it. I'm pretty sure you've never seen anything like it. None of your viewers have ever seen
once in a 100-year
like
event, for sure.
It's absolutely insane. In recruiting, it takes 4 things to close a search. BANT, right? Budget, authority, need, timeline. And what we're seeing is that the budgets are now under review, the needs are under review, and the timelines are under review. And those things are like stones in an arch. Typically, if any one of those things gets soft and crumbly, the whole thing comes tumbling down. And now we have 3 of the 4 things that are soft and crumbly. And we do a ton of business with direct-to-consumer brands that sell on Amazon. We do a ton of business with multi-channel merchants, and our business for the last several years has been very brisk, and it absolutely died like a dog in the dirt about 10 days ago. When is that gonna come back? This is the shrugging part of the phone call.
Yeah.
It's the shrugging part of the Zoom. I have no idea what to expect.
So I'm sorry to hear about the business fall off. I mean, we're all feeling that pain right now. But my personal take, I think that, obviously I'm biased towards Amazon. I think Amazon is recession proof. And I think the economy for e-commerce is probably the first sector that will recover. So that's my take. But what have you been seeing as you've been talking to businesses? You mentioned that budget, authority, need, and timing are all completely under review, but any other insight you can offer on that?
So every CEO that we've spoken to, every VP of HR that we've spoken to, there's a grease fire now in their business. And what we're seeing is that CEOs, a lot of them, don't know what the world holds for their wholesale and retail business. So DTC, which is the .com business, but it also is third-party markets, Amazon, eBay, Overstock, what have you. Like, they're not really sure what to expect with those channels. And what I can say is that we see e-commerce being dialed back in organizations. It's essential, right? So people are, I mean, we know they're going to do it in the future. But I don't know how long this delay is going to be. Like, you know, if you're in a business where you sell an amazing, I don't know, golf accessory or something that's not essential, you sell that on Amazon, then Amazon may or may not deliver it, right? If you're in a business that's deemed essential, then you're probably in pretty good shape. But the fallout from the coronavirus thing has been unbelievable. We know that our business will recover. I'm not too stressed about that. But it's a challenge for CEOs that have a lot of operating leverage, a lot of financial leverage, a lot of overhead. How long this lasts, anybody's guess.
So you mentioned it's funny you mentioned the golf products. We have a company that sells golf mats. And in the last 7 days, they set a new record. They're selling off the shelves because everybody's home in their work offices,
right?
Putting. So,
right.
But you're right. In this particular business, they ship both FBA and merchant fulfilled, and so luckily they have the infrastructure in the warehouse to ship direct to consumer. Last question on Corona, and then I would love to get to more of your history and deep understanding of the space. But last question: what piece of advice would you give to CEOs and CMOs right now in e-commerce?
Again, I'm shrugging. You know, you want to be positive outcome oriented. Well, this is the good thing about being middle-aged, right? I went through 9/11. I went through 2008 as an e-commerce recruiter. So I started recruiting for e-commerce in 2004. And like, I know how this ends. I know how this movie ends, right? America ends up doing great. People end up doing great. How that happens, what it looks like at the end, I really don't know. My son came in here last week quoting Vladimir Lenin, you know, who said, let me see if I get this right. There are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen.
Oh, that's a good one.
And well, that's what you're seeing out there. So you look at, you know, accelerated adoption of Zoom, for example, or you see accelerated adoption of e-commerce. In fact, e-commerce previously, I'm making this up, I should know the statistic, but let's say e-commerce was 17, 18% of retail. Well, it's more than that, you know, partly because I can't leave the house, and none of your guests can or viewers can leave the house right now. But it's like, if I were to go to Publix, I'm not sure how much inventory there's going to be on the shelf down there. So I have to trip consolidate with groceries. It has to be a planned thing. The impulse purchasing is going away, at least for the next 3 months. And that's enough time for consumers to change and make new habits. And you couldn't have written that into the wildest Silicon Valley business plan. And what's weird about it is that the foe, you know, America's foe in this instance, it's not economic, so you can't sanction the enemy. It's not political, right? It's not military, so you can't bomb the crap out of the enemy. It's
which we're
biological. Good at. Well, you know, sure, we should be better.
No,
we're really amazing at.
The bomb the crap out of it is what I said we're good at. But Bill Gates definitely, Bill Gates definitely put us on task today. He blasted the country or the government and how it's being run for how we could respond to Corona. By the way, guys, those that are listening right now, Harry Joyner has one of the best LinkedIn activity updates in the space. And, you know, last week, one of the things you posted, Harry, was something along the lines of, you know, you got to be that rock or that firm foundation in this noise right now. You talked about positive oriented tasks. What was that quote? Do you remember the quote you posted? Sorry, I don't mean to put you on the spot here.
I actually got that from my dad. My dad said, we were talking about the, you know, stuff hitting the fan, and he said, be the rock. And I thought, okay, That's easy to remember. So if you're a leader in a company, however big the company is, people feel better about themselves, ideally, because they're led by you. People want to be led. They want to know that they're following somebody who's future oriented, that you have a plan for growth, you have a plan for survival. And these are tough times, and you'll get through it. I don't know how you're going to get through it, but it's sink or swim. I know if people are watching this podcast or they're watching the YouTube video and they're fans of yours, Stephen, they're swimmers, right? So they're going to figure out how to swim at the end of this. It's going to be uncomfortable, but we're going to work it out. We're going to get through it.
So I appreciate that insight. And you know, I think the way you think about the future and articulate it has years of experience behind it. And the way, you know, you mentioned, you know, we've been through this before, we'll go through it again, and these cycles. So I'm really interested to tap into your knowledge set here. So let's go back in history a bit. You've seen e-commerce basically from its infancy to what it is today, and you niched yourself in recruiting for jobs and for companies in the e-commerce space specifically. So I think people would be curious to know how did you get started in this, and what have you seen over the years that's fascinated you?
Oh God. How much time do you have? The way I got started was a total accident. I went to work for, I was laid off in the recession of 2001. I was unemployed and broke for 2 years. I ended up at a contingency recruiting agency that was like a draw versus straight commission kind of thing. And I was recruiting in the bullpen one day, and we got an inbound call from a VP of HR named Jim Bulger at a company called Benchmark Brands. They ran an online retail site called FootSmart. And the lady who answered the phone, Carrie, like, she literally covered the mouthpiece and she hollered out, you know, does anybody know anything about online retail? And it was like one of those Three Stooges army bits, you know, where the captain's looking for a volunteer and two of the dudes step back and the dummy who's out front, he gets the assignment. And the other two recruiters stepped back, and I was like, sure, I'll take it. And it whatever, the rest is history. I loved it. It had an interesting mix of sourcing and procurement, and omni-channel. Nobody called it omni-channel back then, but there was direct mail. Most of the business, this is 2004, right? Most of the businesses that were in the internet retail or top 300, it was only top 300 back then, it seemed like they were migrating over from the catalog space. Now, you're going to maybe have some viewers out there who are going to call bullshit on that, and good on them if they do, but it seemed to me like there were a lot of catalogers, Norm Thompson and Spiegel and whatnot. And I'm a big Dan Kennedy fan, and a big, like, I love direct response copywriting, and I read just for fun, you know, the works of Bob Bly is a hero of mine, Gary Halbert, Ted Nicholas, et cetera. And so I'd read a bunch of that kind of stuff previously. And I don't know, direct mail, just the idea that you could send somebody something in the mail that they had ordered online, they would pay you for that, seemed like magic to me. So it was a business that I connected with on a personal level. And I mean, you can hear it in my voice. The enthusiasm for the business hasn't worn off one bit in the last, what is it now, 2020? So that's 16 years of e-commerce recruiting, and it's just as cool today as it was back then. Of course, now you have mobile, social, local, global cloud, and there's all sorts of stuff that surprises me. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that surprises me, and there's all sorts of stuff that I don't understand. APIs and the technology integration piece, and you know, all the retargeting stuff that goes on. And Jack Welch, you know, the GE guy, used to say that when the rate of change outside of your organization is greater than the rate of change inside of your organization, you're screwed.
Interesting.
And it's really hard to metabolize all of the change that's going on out there in the tech space and the e-commerce space, which now you have to be financially literate, you have to be good in operations, good at planning, good at forecasting, great at marketing, great. You have to understand legal stuff. You have to be good at negotiation, good at people management. You really have to know your stuff, and you have to have game to make money in e-com now. It wasn't always like that.
So Harry Joyner and we've had, I could probably say 70 plus phone calls. So we've had a lot of phone calls over the years, and these are on average 40-minute phone calls. Like, we talked a lot. And so
yeah, we do.
And
yeah, we do.
And I enjoy those phone calls. And most of that time, when Harry first invested in my career, as I'd like to say, I call him up one time and I said, "Hey, my boss said I should know you if I was ever going to have a career in e-commerce." And this was when I was working for a women's plus-size clothing company called Ula Popkin. And I just said, "Hey, I know I'm not important enough to be on your radar yet, but what do I need to do today so I can be important enough to be on your radar in the future?" And you took me under your wing and you gave me great advice. And then perhaps the one thing that set me apart is I actually took your advice and ran with it. And it wasn't even 6 months later that I had to call you back up and said, "Hey, actually, I need a job now. Can you help me out? I've taken all your advice. Here's what I've done. I've read the books. I've updated my resume. I did these things." And, less than 30 days later, you had placed me. Over the years, Amazon became something I was really fascinated about. I niched myself in Amazon a few years ago. And I started telling you, "Harry, I'm going to niche myself in this area." And you said, "Definitely do it. Burn your ships, my friend." Steven, you said, when I went and started my agency, and that was so hard. That was so hard to burn my ships and go all in on the agency. But shortly after that, the dynamic between us started to change. And instead of me calling you started to call me more, and it was because
that's true.
And it was because people started asking you questions about Amazon, and you're like, "Well, I know a guy," and I became the Amazon guy, right? But I'd love to hear your insight on that. And I didn't mean to diatribe a bit, but I wanted to set that up because what's your opinion on how you mentioned things that surprised you? Did Amazon surprise you?
Yeah. My wife and I we've had a ton of arguments. We've been married for 27 years.
God bless you. Yeah, that's great.
Two of the biggest arguments we've had. The first one was she and I had a big fight one night because she swore that the Beatles would have been a better band without Paul McCartney. I'm like,
you're a drummer.
That's just stupid.
Yeah, you're a drummer, and you're big into music.
And I've been drinking and whatever. That probably didn't help. And I'm a Beatles fan. So that was one thing. The other thing is that I'm not really ashamed to say I've never owned a single share of Amazon stock.
Could have,
I didn't understand it.
Yeah.
I didn't understand it. I mean,
So Harry's looking in the back of his.
So if your viewers can see this is a picture of Muhammad Ali. We're knocking out Sonny Liston, and you see that guy right there. That's me ringside with eCommerce the last 14 years, and I didn't own a single share. This is Amazon. This is everybody else. I saw it. I didn't understand it. And the reason I didn't understand it was because there were a lot of people shit talking Amazon. But beyond that, I didn't understand the cloud business, and I didn't understand this, the impact of the cloud business on Amazon's financial footing. Like, I just didn't get it. And if I remember correctly, it wasn't until 2015, maybe, or 2016, that Amazon started busting out its financials to Wall Street, basically explaining the impact of the cloud business on the rest of their operations. And you've seen this guy, Scott Galloway, the bald guy from NYU with the big horn rim glasses. He's a fan of military history, and he has this little rap that he does about how the U.S. beat the Axis, or not just the U.S., but the Allies beat the Axis powers towards the end of the Second World War because we had so much more gas. That I think he says that for every 1 gallon of gas the Nazis had, the U.S. had 39 gallons of gas.
Wow, that's
and
big.
He says basically that's what happened with Amazon. It's because they had such an inflated stock price, and they had more financial fuel. They could do anything they wanted, and they could run over people. And that's what they did. And by the time I realized that it was a runaway train, it was too late. And I kept looking for dips in the stock price, and the dips never came. And I'm not a Wall Street guy. I mean, we invest in stuff, but like, I'm not a stock expert. And one of your viewers, I'm sure, will correct me, but it's like the FANG stocks, I think, are responsible for 40% of the run up in like the Dow and the NASDAQ over the last 5 to 7 years. Like if you strip Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, Google, whatever, if you
the four black
those
horsemen
tech stocks out, yeah, that basically the stock market doesn't look nearly as amazing as it did until 6 weeks ago. So there's a lot of shit about Amazon that really surprises me, frankly.
So we're gonna dip and dab a bit in different areas. So companies that are posting jobs in the next 6 months, what should they do differently today, in your opinion?
Differently today in terms of, like, differently how? Because there's a couple of answers to that question.
So what I suspect you might talk about is the future of home-based e-commerce jobs.
Oh.
And how they might have to cater a little bit more to that. But what do companies need to do in the future to attract talent? And how do you think the interaction between talent and organizations is going to change this year?
I don't have any idea. I really have no idea. There's a part of me that thinks that you'll never get this home-based genie back in the bottle. I've seen a number of videos in the last 10 days from big credible news organizations, Wall Street Journal, Economist, whatever, BBC. People see the value in working from home. I work from home. I've been here for, 15, 16 years, and I love it. And we live in Atlanta, and the traffic is terrible. So the estimates that I've seen is that for most employment relationships, full-time, you could see people going to like a 3-2, you pick your 2 floating days and you pick your 3, on-site days. You could go to a 2-3. I think it depends. I don't want to be long-winded about this, but if you have a line level job, let's say you're an affiliate marketing manager or you're a paid search manager, you do something in the area of performance marketing, and it lends itself to being off-site, then you can work remote. If you're a load-bearing wall in your organization and you have to get things done through others, then I think management is probably still a contact sport. But I think there's probably a lot of data that needs to be collected at a macro level and also at a micro level to see how effective working from home has been for people. Are they getting more stuff done? Like, I would tell you, just anecdotally, 15 days ago, if I'd interviewed somebody and they had a screaming kid in the background or whatever, I might go I wouldn't say anything about it, but I might make a mental note. Yeah, a little. Whereas today it's just a thing.
Everybody's got
and
it.
And people just expect the recruiter to accommodate that. You may see more of that in the future. I think companies, management teams have a fiduciary responsibility to their boards and to their stakeholders outside of the organization to make money. Like at the end of the day, and I don't think the board ultimately cares
How?
whether the staff is in or out. In fact, they would prefer remote because it's less real estate. It's less, they want to keep teams as lean as possible. There was, your viewers can go look up the analyst transcript call on seekingalpha.com, right? So seekingalpha.com, Restoration Hardware, which is now called RH. And I'm not a fan of the company, but I just happened to be reading their analyst call transcript yesterday just to see what impact COVID was having on a specialty retailer. And their CEO was absolutely brilliant. And I was like really amazed because I read a lot of these transcripts. And the guy was saying that it goes back to the Jack Welch rate of change outside of your organization versus rate of change inside of your organization thing, that for certain positions like web development, web design, you want to stay as current as possible with those skills. And so let's say that 3 months ago, the average tenure of a web designer, web developer at Restoration Hardware was 5 years. Well, every 5 years, something with mobile, social, local, global cloud changes. So a person who had a world-class web design and web development skill set 4 years ago, maybe they're not cutting edge today. Maybe they don't develop in the new languages very effectively today. Maybe they're not plugged into something that's hip and sexy and funky and cool and edgy. And maybe their thing has gotten a little bit tired. So this CEO was saying, listen, maybe there's a certain part of our workforce that we want to keep interim and part-time and variable because, number one, we like the fact that it's variable, right? It's good for our balance sheet. Number two, it's good for our benefits, our package that way. It's probably better for our culture, right? Because it's in the organization, I think companies that have a smaller circle of competence that's very sharply defined around the edges are going to do better. Companies that are probably a bit more ice pick-like in their value proposition and their ability to execute versus sledgehammer-like. You don't want to be a blunt object. You want to be an ice pick.
That's a good metaphor.
And, and the more people you pull into that, the harder it is to have an incredibly pointed value prop. I'm just a stupid recruiter working from home. So there's a lot I don't know. This is just an impression. But I can see a lot of really compelling arguments in favor of the company maintaining the change and the relationship that COVID has mandated on employees and businesses. You guys were effective working from home. Some of you stay at home.
I think
the ones who weren't effective staying at home, we have to revisit that.
I think that, you could probably summarize what you mentioned as we're going to go from activity-based to accomplishment-based. And instead of,
right,
hey, I'm doing my 5 o'clock rounds to see who's staying late tonight as the boss, it's who completed actual work and got the mission done today. And I think that's going to be a big change. I use some tools that help me, track accomplishments instead of they track activity too, don't get me wrong, but like we use Asana for project management. We use Harvest for time tracking and finance. And I think that those tools and Zoom stock's way up, obviously, because everybody's using Zoom now. And those are the tools of the future. And my team has been using those because we've been a complete remote team for 2 years.
Right.
And it's been really good for us to follow. So not very many people know what your office looks like. I happen to be one of the guys who's been there, and I know what it looks like. And you live and die by the 2x2 card. And I think this is one of the most fascinating things about Harry Joyner and eCommerce jobs and what you do. Can you tell me a little bit about why you're so attracted to the 2x2 card and maybe explain to my listeners what I'm even talking about?
Sure. Okay. Do I have a 2x2? I'm surprised. Now that you mention it, I don't even have a 2x2 on my desk. So
spitball, you're
but
good
I
at it.
explain it all the time. All right. So fair enough. All right. So if you're on YouTube, actually, hold on just one second.
So Harry, while he's prepping here a little bit, he
I have
constantly,
a note card. I'm surrounded by note cards.
and
Good. Keep going.
and so whenever you're making a choice, right? Harry he'd always say you got an outcome of 4 options, and we talk about any random scenario you could come up with. Harry would 2x2 it, and it really actually helped change how I viewed the situation after the 2x2 had been created. Not a 2x2 example I'm about to bring up, but here's another example. You could pick 2 of 3 options when you were trying to find an e-commerce job. You could pick location, salary, and title. And I think that's going to change with Corona. I think location, it might be pick 3 of 3 now, maybe it's everybody gets to work from home, but now you got to pick title or you got to pick salary. I don't know what's going to happen there. So how's that 2x2 card coming? What example are you going to roll with today?
I'm drawing one.
Okay.
Hold on just one second.
All right, keep drawing.
I didn't realize I would have had one already made up. I'm sure I have one already made up. Okay. So this is one that I do all the time. And people are like, what's this, right? So this is the famous Ansoff marketing matrix. And it basically says there's 4 ways to grow a business, right? So on the y-axis, you have customers. Actually, the y-axis, you have products. And on the x-axis, you have customers.
By the way, you used this 2x2 on our first phone call together. This is awesome.
I use this 2x2 today.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good one. Fantastic.
This dog will hunt. I didn't invent it, right? The guy who invented this, Ansoff at Harvard, should be, charging me a royalty for this. All right.
I love it.
So there's 4 ways to grow any business. You online retailers out there, this applies to you personally, okay? So you sell old products to old customers, old products to new customers, new products to old customers, and new products to new customers. And I use this construct not just because it's highly effective, like I do my job on a telephone. And my philosophy of recruiting, and I get this from Don Draper. There's an episode of Mad Men where Don Draper says something along the lines of, I never want to work with a client whose product can't be sold on the back of a single story. And that's a great thing to remember if you're going to be in the phone sales business. I was born to be on a telephone. I love the telephone. The telephone to me is like, a Colt 45 sidearm for an infantryman. You can do anything with it. I was never in the infantry, and I don't own a gun, but it's one of these things that it's just like, it's great, and my attitude is that there's a lot of ways that you can complicate an e-commerce recruiting selling story, right? Companies that sell DTC, companies that sell on Amazon, companies that sell Walmart, eBay, Overstock, et cetera. There's a lot of ways that a recruiting sales pitch on a telephone can get away from you. There's a lot of different rabbit holes to go down. So I use 2x2s to help crystallize my thoughts and keep it super simple, right? And I can get any candidate on the telephone to just draw a 2x2, because I say draw a 2x2 and everybody's like, okay, and then it's like, well, okay, O over O, O over N, N over N, N over O. Okay, so what we're trying to do here with this particular client is sell old products to new customers and old products to old customers. And they're like, really? Well, how do you sell old products to new customers? Well, now we know it's the digital marketing trifecta of paid media and owned media and earned media. Now we know that there's pay-per-click and display ads and retargeting and social media ads and stuff. We know basically what the gist of the sales pitch is when you draw it out on a little card like this. So I use these a lot. So does that answer your question?
It does, absolutely. And this is a random question. I don't know if you'll be able to answer it, but if your life was a 2x2 card, what would it look like?
God.
And if you draw a blank, that's okay. I'll move on. But I had that one in my ballpark. I wanted to see if you could hit that one. That's all right. That's all right.
I don't know.
It's a strange one. I hit you on the spot. All right, I'll move on from that one.
It would be something like the x-axis is can be described on a 2x2. The y-axis is, I don't know. I'll have to think about it.
Maybe the telephone is the y-axis. I don't know. All right, okay.
Yeah, I like the phone. The phone is good.
All right, so that's good. Okay, so you have read countless e-commerce books and business books. What's a book everybody should be reading right now?
Ooh. I'll tell you what a really good book is. This is a great book. The Amazon Marketplace Dilemma by James Thompson.
We'll put a link in the description on this for you guys listening.
You totally should. Like mine is dog-eared and tabbed and highlighted. And I mean, I have a lot of books, and a lot of my books look like this. What's another amazing? This is a book that I really like. If one of my kids lost it or I spilled coffee all over it, I would just buy another one. It's that good of a book. And he's got a new book out, and I haven't bought it yet because of the COVID thing. I didn't think they would deliver it, but he had a new book that was released, I don't know, several weeks ago, I think. And it's probably awesome because he's smart as hell. Recently, there was a big PBS Frontline special, and they interviewed James Thompson. Like, he got like his own little 14-minute segment. He's a PhD. I don't know him. I think I've spoken to him one time in my whole life. But my IQ is lost in the rounding of that dude's IQ.
Nice. What's your favorite thing in that book? I know it's going to be hard to pick one, but what was the first thing that came to your mind?
No, it's actually not. The hand, I would say chapter 3, page 51. You asked. That's this.
And what is it?
Stephen, by the way, you YouTube watchers out there, like Stephen and I weren't planning to, this is just, we're just ad-libbing this whole thing.
All of my shows are unscripted, and I never edit them. And that could
good.
That could be pure laziness or efficiency. Not sure which. But all right, so what do you like on that page?
Well, okay. So he's got like a 30-page section where he goes through the trade-offs between Amazon models, right? So I'm going to present to your crowd here, but if you're real Stephen Pope fans, you'll actually love this, right? So when you sell on Amazon, there's 6 ways to manage the trade-off. You YouTubers can do a screen grab with that, right? And so if you're a branded manufacturer and you're looking to pursue selling on Amazon, there's 6 ways that you can manage that, right? So let's say we run a company, me and Steven, called Acme Dog Collars, right? Okay, so now we're trying to figure out, do we sell on Amazon or not? Well, what are our options? Well, option number 1 is we can do nothing, and our dog collars will just find their way to Amazon because they will. Number 2 is we can sell 1P, which is selling directly to Amazon retail. Number 3 is we can do multiple authorized 3P, which is selling to multiple authorized third-party resellers. Number 4 is we can do exclusive 3P, which is selling through exclusive third-party resellers. Was that 3 or 4? Number 5 is 3P, which is selling as the exclusive third-party seller of record. And number 6 is blended 1P, 3P, which is selling to Amazon retail as well as
and the hardest of the lot.
A third-party seller. It's the hardest of the lot.
We have maybe 2 or 3 clients out of 65 that do blended.
There you go. All right. So, well, how do you know which one of these you should pick? And now Stephen and I have to have a discussion about what's holding us back in our business, right? So think of it like this. Here's another 2x2 grid coming. Hold on. So you YouTubers out there, I want you to go to Google, and I want you to Google Gartner Magic Quadrant right now. Google Gartner Magic Quadrant. And what you're going to see with Gartner Magic Quadrant is this. You're going to see this, an x-axis and a y-axis, right? The x-axis is completeness of vision, or that's the y-axis. The x-axis is ability to execute, right? Now, what Gartner does every year is they look at a particular category of enterprise software. They actually, I think they probably look at dozens and dozens of them, but this is the principle of their keystone piece of research, which is the Magic Quadrant. And they say, let's say it's CRM we're looking at, and we're looking at all of the companies that offer CRM solutions in the marketplace, right? So we'll rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Completeness of vision on a scale of 1 to 10, and ability to execute on a scale of 1 to 10. Somebody like Salesforce.com would be way out here. And somebody who just started their business that didn't have a fully realized vision and they've got an inability to execute, they're way down here. Okay, so this model is really, really handy. You got to understand that I'm on the phone with people all day, every day. And the only kind of recruiting that I do is e-commerce recruiting. So if you guys watch Steven's show, this is it, right? This is the only kind of recruiting that I do. So if Steven and I have a business where we're selling dog collars, right? And we say, okay, we have to figure out how do we want to do business on Amazon? Is it 1P, 3P, blended 1P, 3P? Is it do nothing, right? We have to have a frank discussion with ourselves about, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, how realized is our current vision? And Steven and I he might say 4 and I might say 6. And so we'll meet in the middle, 5. Okay, so what 3 things would make us a 10? And then we talk about that and we whiteboard that out. Okay, what about our ability to execute? Steven, what would you say we are? Steven says, I think we're a 6. And I'm like, I think we're actually a 5. So we meet in the middle, we're 5.5. Okay, what 3 things would make us a 10? What I do with this book, again, it's the Amazon Marketplace Dilemma, is this book will give you all of the things that will impact your decision regards to doing nothing, selling 1P, 3P, multiple authorized 3P, 3P, blended 1P, 3P, whatever, right? So let's say that Steven and I say the things that are really keeping us from being fully realized in our business and online might be profit margins or getting paid or impacted discounts or daily involvement with Amazon and other online retail platforms or fulfillment.
And based on
right?
that grid, we have to pick one of those options.
We have to pick basically like what's holding us back, right? And I don't know if James Thompson would suggest you like mashing up the Gartner Magic Quadrant in his book. I don't know of another recruiter. I don't know of another marketing executive who would do that. This is just the way my mind works, and I'm not even defending it. I'm just saying that it works for e-commerce recruiting. Maybe this doesn't actually work in a real e-commerce business. I think it does because everybody who hears this goes, wow, that's really clever,
yep.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Here's one example too. So like if you have an item that sells under $15, it's really hard to make a profit selling 3P on Seller Central. And that's because the logistics costs are high, the referral costs are high. And that's why you'd want to go first party wholesale to Amazon. And then there could be all kinds of logistics issues, whether the item is big, large, heavy, small, it doesn't matter. Those could be other things. So you're about to say something else. Keep going.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that we said that one of the things that was holding us back in our dog collar business was profit margins, right? And so Steven and I are like, okay, so what does that have to do with Amazon? How does that work, right? Which one of these things, 1P, 3P, et cetera, should we pick if we've got problems with margins? Well, what Jim Thompson has done is he's taken all of these issues, right, and he's broken them down this is my red writing. He actually, Jim, if you're watching this, you should include a little like reference page there. I doubt he'll see this, but anyway, so you go to the page about profit margins and he's got it busted out. If you do nothing, no sales, no margins. If you do 1P, as mentioned earlier in the cost of selling section, margins vary widely depending on whether or not a brand gets a sweetheart deal from Amazon. Most brands selling to Amazon make margins less than or equal to the brand selling on third-party sellers, yada, yada, yada. Okay, well, that's fairly thorough. Here's what happens if we do multiple authorized 3P, exclusive 3P, blended 1P, 3P, et cetera. He's got, for every one of probably 30 different issues, he's got the 6 outcomes. It's really handy. Really handy. It's really handy for e-commerce recruiting because candidates will say on their LinkedIn bio and in their resume too that they know how to sell on Amazon. But they never actually say what they're good at in terms of selling on Amazon. Because
selling on Amazon is like running a full freaking business. Right?
It's like running a full freaking business.
And it's, you know, your job could be entirely shipping stuff into Amazon. That could be it. Or it could be I control the catalog. Or it could be I set the keywords on the back end, or I did the PPC management. And that's completely separate. Those are 5 different job sectors.
It's 5 different job sectors, and you could be a gangster, right? At any one of those things. You could be the Bruce Lee of Amazon PPC, and good on you, man, if that's what you do, right? Because Amazon is that big now. It's 51% of retail, and which would make it, what would that make it for total retail? Like 5% of total retail. I mean, it's crazy. So you could spend your whole life unpacking one aspect of selling on Amazon, and this is where I think corporate recruiters are going to get into trouble the rest of this year, because everybody now is spending so much time on LinkedIn that when a company runs an e-commerce job using Easy Apply on LinkedIn, they're literally going to get hundreds of applications.
Which is why they should hire an e-commerce recruiter to come in and say, actually, this guy actually knows what he's talking about.
Well, it's like I like to maybe I shouldn't say this. I guess I will. It's the internet. I like to collect certain things. I don't want to be super specific about the things because somebody could see this and whatever, so, but there's a certain thing that I like, and I own kind of a lot of it, and it's easy to knock it off if you don't know what you're getting. Like this one particular thing that I like and the other collectors like, it's easy to knock it off. And fakes abound. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can lose a lot of money. And in this one thing that I like to buy and sell and trade that's, pretty fairly pricey, they say, buy the seller, don't buy the thing, right? Think about that. So buy the seller, don't buy the art. Buy the seller, don't buy the watch. Buy the seller, don't buy the tin soldier. Buy the seller, don't buy the vintage guitar. Buy the seller, So what I'm saying with that is that this one thing that I buy, it's very information intensive. There's a lot to know about it. And as a recruiter, what's fascinating to me about that is that there's nothing more information intensive than a candidate, than a person. And I don't mean to ass kiss with you, but like the first time I ever interviewed Stephen Pope, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen to Stephen Pope other than he's going to end up doing very well in life. I know he's going to do well in life because he's got, faith, hope, charity, wisdom, justice, temperance, fortitude. He's a very business-oriented guy. I love his people skills. He's a great listener. He can take a punch. He can dish a punch. All that is stuff you don't necessarily see on a LinkedIn bio. The sun's going down, so it's getting dark in my office.
You're fine.
That's, so I guess HR departments are going to have a real hard time, I think, figuring out who's got game when it comes to selling on Amazon. and I'll close with this expression. In the recruiting business, there's this joke that goes, people get hired for what they've done and fired for who they are.
This that one takes a while to think about.
Hired for what they've done and fired for who they are. And e-commerce is such, it requires you to lead and be led. You have to think holistically about the business. You have to think about the customer and who they are and where they are and how they think and how they buy and what do they fear and what makes them mad. And you have to be able to think just about, you have to be unbelievably business oriented and unbelievably humble to wrap your brain around that whole thing. And but all of that, it's stuff that's impossible to discern from looking at somebody's LinkedIn bio.
So I have to agree. All right, so I got a couple last questions for you here, Harry. So for those that want to be a CMO working on the corporate track, so this is, I don't want to be a business owner, I want to be a chief marketing officer at a corporation. What should they be doing today to prepare to do that?
Okay, so it's really essential that you understand business math. You don't have to be really agile with numbers, but if you're not really agile with numbers, then you need to, no kidding, I'm not teasing when I say this, that you need to get the right calculator, you need to download the right calculator app, etc., from the iPhone store. You need to develop workarounds to help you manage that. And I'm not talking about analytics. I'm talking about break-even analysis. I'm talking about the ability to think in terms of margins. Are we making money on this? What's our cost per lead? What's our cost per sale? Like the basic formula for any business, whether you're running a dog collar company or a lemonade stand, it's revenue equals number of customers times average order value times number of times per year we sell to that customer. That's what it is. And what I've done, and I would encourage other recruiters to do it, and I would encourage other executives to do it, is I've taken that one little formula and I've bolted on a lot of other sort of mathematical stuff, like, the ability to gross up a particular number by a, certain percentage churn rate or whatever. Like I have an HP 17B2, look it up on Amazon. It's an actual thing. Don't get the app, get the actual calculator. You can get the ones made in Singapore on eBay. That's an actual thing. You should actually do that. And then you go into the solver menu and you build that formula into the back. And then as you go through your day and you're doing cohort analysis, you're doing quintile analysis in your customer evaluation SKU, you're walking through a warehouse and you're trying to analyze, is this inventory SKU selling or not? You can go, okay, so how many 12-month buyers do we have for this thing? Okay, great. What's the average order value for this thing? Great. What were our sales? Great. Back solve now for the order frequency. Now you know the way to sell more of that particular thing is by improving the order frequency. Okay, great. What's my menu of options now for improving the order frequency on that one thing? Are there cross-sells? Are there upsells? What are the levers for growth? And at the end of the day, I think what CMOs are beginning to learn up close and personal is that really in marketing these days, there's nothing as devastating to an opinion as a number. So I would say step one is make it easy for yourself to have an analytical bias to the way you make decisions. And I'm not just talking about the analytics. I'm talking about just the basic business math. Number two, as you get comfortable with the math, understand what the things are that drive the things that impact those numbers. So I was watching a Frank Kern video a couple of weeks ago, and Frank Kern, and I think I've read this on Moz too, that a really cool thing that SEO people and SEM people are doing these days is they're trying to figure out, like, what does your customer Google before they Google your thing, right? So before they Google dog collar, if you're capturing demand as opposed to creating demand, because those are two different things, right? But before they Google that, what are they Googling? And is there any way that you can anticipate that need and you can manipulate and drive that need? Well, it's the same way with that formula. For example, revenue equals number of customers times average order value times number of times per year the customer buys. It's like, well, what are the leading and lagging indicators of me driving this one thing, and can I manipulate that? And of the things that manipulate that, what are the leading and lagging indicators of that, right? So it gets a little bit Boris Spassky, he's the chess master, Bobby Fischer, as you start thinking 2 or 3 or 4 moves ahead, for each variable.
You're starting to pique my interest. I'm a big chess guy.
There you go.
So I love that.
So but a lot of marketers are not analytically biased, and a lot of marketers are not business oriented, and a lot of marketers, shame on you marketers. I talk to a lot of marketers and they don't know how they bring $1 in the door.
Is it because
that shit's not going to fly in the future?
Is that because a lot of the old school marketing was pretty design heavy focus, or what do you think?
I think that this is like probably more of a Seth Godin kind of question. I think we had marketing in general and business in general a while back was less transparent. And, how Coke went to market with something was, their process was a bit of a black box. And in the old world, you could sell a lot of cigarettes by saying Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. And there was no way for a consumer to call bullshit. So nobody ever thought, because they, couldn't call bullshit, they never called bullshit. It was just never a thought that they had. And now, the funnel is flipped. I'm not saying anything new to your viewers. You all know this. The funnel is flipped. And now as a result of that, everybody's mentality towards growth, it's incremental, but for the stuff that isn't incremental, we're still trying to be analytically biased in terms of how we seek quantum growth in a business. This is a little abstract, and my thoughts are not fully formed. But you look at this, for example, with COVID. I'm confident we'll figure it out, because people in general, like the human spirit is amazing to me. How smart people are is absolutely amazing to me. Louis C.K. doing this bit about, people flying through the air on their cell phone, sitting in a chair in the sky, talking on the phone. And that's amazing. And it is totally amazing. So it's just, for everything, there's a process. And marketers need to be insatiably curious. They need to read as much as they can. They need to understand what their values are and the kind of, enthusiasm that they have for whatever it is they have. I have a lot of enthusiasm for a few things and no enthusiasm whatsoever for everything else. My wife hates this. But as marketers, you have to figure out what you're going to be really super enthusiastic about and have that circle of competence and make sure that it's very sharply defined around the edges. And you have to understand, like, anything and everything's relationship to whatever it is that could go in that circle of competence. And then you need to make sure that you go to work for companies that value and need somebody with whatever is in your circle of competence, and they value what it is you value and what it is you're about, so that there's values confluence with their internal stakeholders, their external stakeholders, all of that. It's super important. You are a company. You're a wonderful example of this. You, Stephen Pope, you are your own little enterprise. I am my own little enterprise. And I'm a musician. This is a true thing. I'm a musician. On the weekends, I play the drums, which I guess technically means I hang out with musicians, right? That's the old joke. And if you read books on how to get gigs as a musician, how to get gigs as an actor, you're going to see a lot of that psychology bleed over into the employment marketplace in the future. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
You are a product. Who you are is as much a product as what you do and who you know.
Well, I definitely find that to be the case. All right, so last question for you, Harry, and you've given some great answers today, so I appreciate your time. So you talked a lot about what to develop as a CMO or as a business owner, and I get you. Having that calculation ability is very important. What would you say is a skill that CMOs or business owners need today that they didn't need a decade ago?
Today that they didn't need a decade ago.
So clearly they've always needed the math, right? That's a core one. But is there any new skill that you a decade ago you would have been looking for, but now maybe you are?
Okay, so I don't do this. So I'm about to give an answer that I'm like totally out on a limb. But there's a book, copywriters love this book, and I write a lot of copy, and I have copywriting heroes, right? So I'm not uninformed on direct marketing and copywriting. But the best copywriters in the world for the last 20 years have loved a book called Method Marketing by a guy named Denny Hatch. Method Marketing by Denny Hatch. And the book really, when you get right down to it, is all about developing an affinity with your customer. Who are they? Where are they? How do they think? How do they buy? What do they fear? What makes them mad? Why do I care what makes them mad? Because if I know what makes you mad, I can align with you against the thing that makes you mad and sell you my stuff, right?
Good old otherization.
Right? So what are your top 3 daily frustrations? That kind of stuff. And what method marketing is all about is really being able to develop that. And the first half of that book is Denny Hatch explaining where he got the idea for the book, which is he got it from acting. And Stanislavski in particular. So Stanislavski wrote a book called The Actor Prepares, which is a little dense, but it's really fascinating. The Actor Prepares. And it's all about being able to sort of, put on the mind of your customer, right? And see the world through your customer's eyes. And a lot of CEOs, a lot of business owners, they don't do that. And there's a copywriter named John Carlton who has always said that at any given point during the day, pick up any point randomly during the day, your slam dunk customer is having a conversation with themselves, right? So if you catch somebody walking down the hall, even if they're not saying anything to anybody, you're interrupting them. They're in the middle of a conversation with themselves about their kid, their wife, their marriage, how much their back hurts, how much they hate their boss, their indigestion, whatever. And as a marketer, your job is to slip in to that conversation in a way that moves the conversation forward. And at the end of the day, you want to sell more stuff to more people more often for more money. You want to do that, but you want to do it.
That's one of my favorite Harry Joyner quotes right there. I had to stop you.
It's not even mine.
I know,
it's not even mine.
But I quote you all the time.
Zeman. It's a Sergio Zeman thing.
Every e-commerce person's job is to do 4 things. It's worth repeating: sell more products to more people more often for more money. I constantly tell people that run with my business with me to always keep their heads on that. And the one that I think most people forget about is the more money one. And that's when raising prices is the conversation. That became very topical, by the way, when you're selling out of all your goods, and a normal Amazon tactic was to raise your prices so you don't stock out on Amazon. Then all of a sudden Amazon's like, price gouging, can't do that. So all these things.
Right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to go down that tangent, but you said one of my favorite things that I envision or put you on a pedestal for, and that was that famous quote. So I appreciate it. Keep going for your finished thoughts here.
Well, yeah, okay. So Sergio Zeman, Z-Y-M-A-N, said that. But anyway, so later, I think Dan Kennedy bolted on. So it is sell more stuff to more people more often for more money. But you want to do that in a way that allows the consumer to feel better about herself because of her relationship with your brand. Like that really is, to me, that's perfect. Like I want to buy stuff, but I want to buy stuff that makes me feel better about myself because I have a relationship with the brand. So I like myself better because I use Apple products. On a certain level, I'm sure I feel morally superior, or, maybe I feel smarter, or maybe there's peace of mind because I've never had a glitch with an Apple product or whatever. There's a story that I tell myself about what it means to be a member of that tribe. And there's been a gazillion books written about this, and it's like, I'm not here to reinvent that wheel, but getting back to CEOs and what they didn't necessarily have to know 10 years ago, they really have to know that. I mean, they really have to know it. They have to know it in order to improve their cost per lead, improve their cost per sale, to fully leverage social media platforms, to this idea that people buy products and they join brands. I mean, that's a really branding. Huge idea. Yeah. And CEOs are going to have to know that, right? Because otherwise, if the consumer doesn't know why she's buying from you and she doesn't feel better about herself because of her relationship with you, then on some level, you're only as smart as your dumbest competitor. And as soon as somebody comes in with a lower price or a faster delivery time, it's, she'll be off, and that'll be the end of that.
So I think that's a good place to end it. So we had, just to summarize kind of what you were thinking there, businesses have to do a couple of things to evolve in this landscape, right? They have to start getting high quality goods. I think personally they need to start making American-made products again, because if they don't, then it's just a price war. Because I feel like Amazon has almost destroyed brands entirely, with one exception, and that's luxury brands, right? Luxury brands still exist. They're going to always exist. But if you bought a widget on Amazon today and you quizzed 100 people, who'd you buy that apple slicer from? Nobody will remember it. And so you're going to have to do something to set yourself apart from the competition. So, Harry Joyner, thank you so much for joining us today. If somebody wants to hire you to help them fill an e-commerce role at their company, eCommercejobs.com is a place to go?
Yeah. And you can text me, right? So my cell phone number, I give that out. I give it out to every one of my job postings.
Harry.
Crazy Harry is 404-281-2025. 404-281-2025. We work on a contingency basis. So if you need us to recruit for you, we'd be delighted to do that. It doesn't cost you anything to engage us. If you want to know how I write a job posting, just go to eCommercejobs.com and you can check out any of those. There's an essay that I include with every single job posting that's, I'm the Jay Peterman of e-commerce careers. I'm happy to say that's what I do.
Well, perfect. Well, again, that was eCommercejobs.com. And then for those of you who have not heard of My Amazon Guy, you're part of Harry Joyner's circle. My Amazon Guy, we're an 8-person digital agency based out of Georgia, one-stop shop for all things Amazon. We help with design, with SEO, PPC, and everything it takes to run an Amazon business. All right, guys, thanks again for joining Harry. That's the My Amazon Guy podcast today, and we hope you liked it. Please subscribe to our podcast, and feel free to send us any comments about what you'd like us to cover next. We'll be sure to check it out. Thanks so much.